right, sit down for this one, because Diddy is giving us something straight out of a movie. This man is spiraling, and every move he makes just gets wilder. Let's start with the chaos outside the courtroom. His people, they're scrambling. Insiders claim his team has been desperately reaching out to Trump for a pardon, throwing shade in the streets, filing lawsuits left and right, and even floating the idea of some kind of big spectacle at Madison Square Garden. It's desperation disguised as bravado, and it reeks of a man who doesn't know how to fight from a position of weakness. Meanwhile, behind those prison walls, the picture is even darker. Some reports claim he's sitting in a cell surrounded by filth.
MDC is so bad, federal judges have questioned the harsh conditions for those here awaiting trial. So bad I was here 2 years ago during a cold spell, reporting on detainees with no heat, pounding on windows for help. There was even a congressional inquiry. But take the word of a former inmate I spoke with who goes by Esco.
It's terrible. The food is terrible. Of course, the inmates are terrible. The guards are terrible. The conditions are terrible. It's just terrible.
The inmates that you're surrounded around, just in general, a lot of them are brought up on pretty heavy federal indictments, right? So just in terms of the atmosphere there, it's just certainly one that no one wants to be in.
Combs was placed in a special housing unit and on suicide watch, the standard protocol for high-profile celebrity detainees. The disgraced mogul was denied bail by 2 separate judges. His attorney, Mark Agnifilo, asked the court to transfer him to the federal detention section at the Essex County Jail, but the judge deferred to the Bureau of Prisons. Federal trial attorney Philip Hamilton says lockdown can mean a lot less time to prepare your defense.
Now the tabloids exaggerate, painting images of him broken and traumatized. But here's the thing. Diddy himself leaned into that narrative. He actually released a statement describing himself as traumatized and living in fear. Think about that. The mogul who once projected untouchable confidence, now reduced to admitting he's a wreck, begging for sympathy from the same judge he used to treat like an obstacle. And yet, the contradictions keep piling up. His lawyer, Mark Agnifilo, once bragged that when Diddy returned to MDC after dodging the top charges, he was treated like a celebrity. A standing ovation, cheers, applause. But then, in a letter to Judge Aaron, Diddy painted a completely different picture, claiming that something happened inside, something so threatening that he had to redact the details. Redacted. Imagine the level of fear he must have wanted to project, blacking out lines in a plea to the judge just to show how unsafe he felt. But here's where it gets messy. For years, Diddy's circle mocked others for being snitches. They wore silence like a badge of honor, treating loyalty as the highest currency. And now, there he is in black and white, putting his fears on paper, essentially pointing fingers in a legal document. It's hypocrisy at its finest. The same man who scorned others for speaking up is now pleading with the court, laying out his terror.
Diddy's legal problem. So Diddy's legal team has just filed a motion for bail. They're offering $50 million. They're, basically arguing that it's unfair that he's behind bars, given the nature of his conviction. His attorneys are asking the judge to approve the $50 million bond package, and they want him to live on house arrest in his Miami mansion while he waits, for his convictions. Now, the judge, has ordered Diddy to remain in Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center until October 3rd, when his sentencing is set. So, and remember, the judge also, cited during the case that Diddy's admitted violence towards his former lovers, including Cassie. He said, quote, "It's impossible for the defendant to show he possesses no danger to any person." So he said that. So that's the reason he felt that he needed to stay behind bars. So I'm wondering, if this, if this will still apply as they're arguing this.
But still, nobody cares. The public isn't moved. The industry isn't rallying. The tide has turned, and sympathy is nowhere to be found. Let's not forget the whispers about his inner circle. For years, people around him acted like a lawless crew, reckless in their behavior, almost as if the rules never applied. Now, one by one, those so-called allies are facing their own problems. One of his most vocal supporters? Reportedly sitting in a cell themselves on domestic charges. The irony is almost poetic. The same empire that mocked accountability now drowning in it. And then there's the gossip. Rumors swirl about him living in constant fear of violence inside MDC. According to the National Enquirer, his life behind bars is torture, with the looming threat of being attacked or worse. Now yes, it's the Enquirer, so you take it with a grain of salt. But the streets have been whispering the same thing, that the mighty mogul is pacing, panicked, sleepless, that behind closed doors, he's unraveling at a speed nobody expected.
Sure. So the Mann Act was passed in 1910, and it's changed a few times through the years, but really what it's geared at, what it's focused on, is prosecuting people who make money from the business of prostitution. And that's not the allegation against Mr. Combs. The allegation of Mr. Combs, what the jury found, essentially was that he was a user of services provided by sex workers, essentially a John, for lack of a better word. And the Mann Act just historically hasn't been applied to Johns. It's a financial statute. It's really been applied at people who look to make money from prostitution. And so since that's not how it's being applied here, we made the argument that we have to, under the case law and the statutes in this area, that this is an exceptional reason and that Mr. Combs should be considered for release on bail because of it.
The contradictions are everywhere. One day he's painted as a prison celebrity with a standing ovation. The next he's described as a man reduced to begging for protection, fearing shadows in his cell. Which version is real? The powerful mogul commanding respect, or the broken man living in fear? Maybe it's both. Maybe we're watching the slow dismantling of a man who once thought he was untouchable, now stripped of power, pride, and allies. Either way, one thing is certain. The story of Sean Diddy Combs isn't just about legal charges anymore. It's about a man trapped in a cycle of contradictions, trying to play strong in public while crying weak in private. And if the whispers are true, if he really is living in constant terror, then this is only the beginning of a downfall that could get even darker.
The Sean Combs post-verdict world is what's next, right? After being convicted of 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution and acquitted of racketeering conspiracy and 2 counts of sex trafficking, now we ask, what is his sentence going to be on those 2 charges, the Mann Act charges? And there's also another question that we're going to address today. Could he get bail? Could he get out? You might be saying, Jesse, wait a second. He was denied bail at every turn. And you would be right, he was. Despite proposing extensive bail conditions during the course of this legal saga, including a $50 million bail package and monitoring by private security personnel, the court was not convinced. Now, by law, the defense has the burden to prove that Combs is not a flight risk or danger to the community. And given the charges, the allegations, including that he was improperly trying to contact people in the case pre-trial, he was always denied release. But then there's what happened after the verdict last week. And this is an interesting conversation.
Let's talk about what's really happening to Diddy behind those prison walls. Because if the reports are true, it's a picture that keeps shifting from one extreme to another. On paper, sources describe him as a man whose confidence has been shattered. They say the swagger is gone, the bravado stripped away, leaving nothing but a broken figure pacing in his cell. Allegedly, he's been climbing the wall since day one, panicked, sleepless, and consumed by fear. His nights, they say, are endless battles with anxiety. No rest, no comfort, just constant dread of what tomorrow might bring. In court, when Diddy stood before the judge, he didn't look like a man wasting away. He wasn't skeletal. He wasn't fragile. In fact, he carried weight, literal and metaphorical. The sketch artist captured him clean, sharper than he's appeared in years. And here's the irony. Diddy himself hated that sketch, furious at how it portrayed him, but to the rest of us, it was almost flattering. For a man who'd been drowning in excess for so long, stripped of the substances that clouded his image, he actually looked healthier, stronger even. And that's where the contradiction lies. Because while one narrative claims he's barely eating, living off scraps, insiders also whisper about commissary noodles and candy bars, oodles and noodles from the prison store, Kit Kats tucked away like treasures. We've all seen prison TikToks. Inmates get creative with their meals, turning noodles into feasts. So the idea that Diddy's starving? It doesn't quite add up. The gut he carried into court told its own story. He wasn't wasting away, he was adapting. But adaptation doesn't mean peace. Behind that cell door, paranoia follows him everywhere. He allegedly complains that the food served to him is infested, crawling with maggots, that he's treated worse than vermin. He insists the guards are against him, that their eyes alone carry hostility.
You knowing Diddy personally, do you think it's possible he might take his life?
It takes a certain individual to prepare himself to do a lot of years in jail. From the lifestyle that he had, I'm not saying that he can't. I just don't see him able to do time behind bars. Maybe if he be in a camp type situation, that's a possibility. But based on the lifestyle and what he's done and what he's accomplished, if he had to go behind those bars for a lot of years, I think that he may commit suicide. He'd do an Epstein.
Why do you think he didn't pull a Russell Simmons and leave the country?
They was watching him, bruh. They was watching him. And then I think that he had to turn over his passport. Even if you own your own private jet, they have a system up there whereas that they supposed to check your passport and anything that you need to fly as if you were flying commercial. He's suffering the consequence and I don't feel bad for him at all. Because people was trying to talk to him. People was trying to tell him. You couldn't pull him by the coat and let him know anything. You understand? They messed up the game, brother. When he put that shit out with them, money, power, respect, it ain't never been like that. It ain't never been like that. You got your respect in the street that gave you your power, that brought you your money. Totally different thing. He let that money, power, and respect go to his head, but he had it ass backwards. So do I care what happened? Nah. He got enough money to buy his way out of this. So we think.
Every look from an inmate, he claims, feels like a threat, like a countdown to violence. To live in that constant state of fear is its own form of punishment. Because whether those threats are real or imagined, the fear is very real to him. And let's not forget how he imagined this would go. According to those who know, Diddy walked into MDC expecting to be larger than life, untouchable even behind bars. He thought his name, his money, his legend would make him a cult figure in prison. Maybe he pictured a Nino Brown fantasy, loyalty bought with commissary, respect earned with whispers of power. But reality? Reality shattered that dream fast. Respect in prison isn't bought with noodles. It isn't won with a name. It's earned in ways he never prepared for. And now, some inmates reportedly treat him with contempt. Instead of reverence, there's mockery. Instead of loyalty, there's distance. He strutted in expecting worship and found scorn. And that scorn eats at him more than the food ever could. Because for a man who built his empire on control, on adoration, rejection is the sharpest blade. So who is the real Diddy inside those walls? Is he the fragile man, suffering panic attacks, clinging to survival, traumatized and sleepless? Or is he the man who still carries weight, still sneaks comfort in noodles and chocolate, adjusting quietly to the grind of prison life? Maybe he's both. Maybe that contradiction is the truth, that the mogul is still physically intact, but mentally unraveling piece by piece. And here's the bigger question. What happens when the legend collides with the reality? When the man who thought he could bend the world to his will discovers he can't even bend the rules of a prison commissary? That's the unraveling we're witnessing. The empire didn't just collapse outside, it's collapsing inside too. And in many ways, that collapse may be the harshest sentence of all.
Well, Diddy is upping his offer to the government. He wants out of jail right now. You know that he is still behind bars at Brooklyn MDC while he is awaiting his sentence in October. But right after he was sentenced, they tried to get out on bail. They made an offer. They said, we'd like for him to be released on $1 million bail. The judge shut that down. So now it's like he's playing Let's Make a Deal, right? How about this, Your Honor? What if we offer a $50 million bail package? The money has gone up, but the reason that he thinks he should get out is because he says what he's convicted of were non-violent offenses.
And he's right. He's right that he was convicted on 2 counts of the Mann Act. The Mann Act is hiring a prostitute and taking the prostitute across state lines. It's a nonviolent crime.
So here's the part that really makes you pause. According to this article, Diddy's getting all kinds of intimidating side eyes from fellow inmates. Not punches, not shanks, not even a shove, just looks. And yet, those cold glances alone were enough for him to pick up a pen, write the judge, and plead for mercy. Think about that. A man who spent over a decade with his name attached to stories of intimidation, control, and alleged terrorizing of women. Now trembling because someone across the cell block raised an eyebrow at him. The irony is staggering, and it gets stranger. He claims the food is unfit for human consumption, allegedly infested with maggots, unworthy of even a rat. But if you connect the dots from earlier reports, he's been snacking on commissary ramen and candy bars without issue. So is the food really the problem? Or is this just another desperate angle to prove his suffering? Then comes the headline grabber. Diddy's camp allegedly pinning all their hopes on one thing, a pardon from Donald Trump. The very idea sparks debate. Would Trump actually consider it? Many legal analysts doubt it. Even if they had once shared friendly words, it's hard to see Trump taking that risk now. Here's why. Trump has always played politics with grudges and loyalty. Back in 2012, he called Diddy a good friend. Fast forward to 2020, Diddy flipped the script, launching the Vote or Die movement, aligning with Democrats, and even calling for Trump to be banished. Trump doesn't forget slights like that. And if his inner circle has any say, granting Diddy a pardon now would be political suicide, especially when the ghost of Ghislaine Maxwell's conviction still lingers in headlines. Associating with another figure linked to exploitation allegations? That's not a move his advisors would ever sign off on. And even if, let's play devil's advocate, even if Trump did grant the pardon, what then? Diddy would walk out of MDC only to face a tidal wave of civil lawsuits waiting for him at the door. Alleged victims lining up in court, lawyers ready with stacks of paperwork, reputations to reclaim. The pardon wouldn't erase any of that. It might get him out of the cell, but it wouldn't get him out of the storm. Meanwhile, the whispers paint him as a man traumatized beyond repair. Insiders say he'll never be the same again, that prison life has broken him mentally and emotionally. And some people hear that and say, good, because for years, stories painted him as the one inflicting trauma. Now the tables have turned, and he's the one crying out. But let's not miss the theatrical layer here. Some even joke that Diddy's story reads less like a legal battle and more like a Greek tragedy. Imagine it, a man compared to the son of Satan himself, marching into Hades, only to realize he's not the ruler, but another prisoner. The grandiose fall from grace, larger-than-life mogul reduced to pleading about side eyes and bad food. And still, there's a darker undertone. Sources close to the case point out that whether or not he gets a pardon, whether or not he survives his current sentence, the damage is already done. His empire's fractured, his allies are silent, his brand is toxic, and even if he walked free tomorrow, the world outside isn't the one he left behind. The lawsuits, the investigations, the whispers, they're not going anywhere. So the bigger question isn't whether Trump will pardon him. The real question is, even if he did, would it matter? As Judge Aaron prepares to deliver sentencing, the weight of public opinion hangs heavy. Some believe this is justice finally catching up with him. Others see it as political theater, a system making an example of a powerful man. Either way, one truth shines through. Diddy's story isn't ending with a neat bow. This is just one chapter in a saga of wealth, power, downfall, and the relentless gaze of a world that once celebrated him and now watches him unravel. So what do you think? Is Diddy a victim of a system that treats celebrity defendants differently, or is this karma circling back full force? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell, because trust me, this story is far from over.